Welcome to the Man Up God's Way podcast, a show that dives into the real, raw, and relevant issues for men and their faith, life, and community. Now, your host, Jody Burkeen.
Hey guys, Jody Burkeen here with the Man Up God's Way podcast. I want to welcome you today. I've got two very special guests that I'm excited to bring to you today. But if you get an opportunity, go ahead and share this with your friends, co-workers, church, your men's group, any group that you're a part of. Help us get the word out a little bit more than what we're doing right now. We want to, number one, take over the internet for God again and give godly content for those who are on social media. And two, we want to be able to spread a good word as far and wide as we possibly can. So make sure that you get this opportunity and make sure you take this opportunity to share this podcast with everyone in your sphere of influence. So without further ado, I'm excited to share with you my guests today, Brian Smith and Ed Uszynski. Guys, how y'all doing today? Brian, we'll start with you.
Doing great, Jody. Thanks for having us. Super excited to be here talking with you.
Oh, good. Glad to have you here too. Ed, how about you?
Same. I feel like the air has officially gotten cold here in Ohio, so I'm bracing. I'm bracing for what's coming.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I love the fall colors. I like kind of a Indian summer, where it stays a little warm, but get the pretty colors. But this weekend, man, we got rain, and then the night after we got rain, it got cold, and it's been cold ever since. So I still got a jacket on in the inside. I'm a equator kind of guy. Put me on the equator. That's the kind of heat I like. I don't like this cold stuff. So. Well, guys, I'm excited about this conversation. I think it's a conversation that's needed. We need to be having as fathers and families as we kind of just guide and direct our children. So let's go ahead and start. Brian, I'm going to start with you. Just kind of tell me a little bit about your testimony, your history, kind of how maybe you guys got together, and then Ed will hear your side of the story as well.
Yeah, there's a lot there just in a couple questions. I grew up in a family that went to church every Sunday. It was 11 years old when I remember going to a Bible camp just out here in Michigan and made a decision for Jesus. I knew enough to know at that point that I was going to live in eternity in one of two places. And at that point in my life, it just seemed like, yeah, why would I not want to live in heaven with Jesus? But I still understand the basics of the gospel. Like I knew that I was a sinner, and I knew that something needed to happen to be right with God. Ended up going to youth group most of my high school life. Had great community. A key marker for me was leaving youth group going into college. I remember my pastor said, he gave some crazy statistic, like 80% of kids who grow up in the church fall away from the faith in college. And so I also grew up playing every sport imaginable. And so as a competitive person, the way I took that was, man, I don't want to be one of those 80%. I want to stay faithful to God. But to me, in the shows where I was a little skewed in my view of the gospel, what that meant was if I need to stay faithful to God in college, it meant I need to not smoke, do drugs, drink, have premarital sex, party. It was like all the big don'ts that you shouldn't do in college. And for the most part, I stayed away from that stuff in college, but I didn't play any offense with my faith either. I wasn't involved in a local church. I wasn't involved in campus ministries. I didn't have anybody pouring into me. And so I spent 4 years of my life at Wake Forest University as a college athlete, essentially playing defense with my faith, and graduated in 2005 just spiritually dead because I wasn't pursuing God. I was just trying to live a good moral life, and that's not faithful living to God. So it wasn't until early on in marriage, I got married right out of college, that I read a book by John Piper called Desiring God, and it completely blew the waters off this idea of my Christian faith should be boring and just essentially moral relativism. And so I started putting his book to the test of like, man, can I be most satisfied in God if He's my ultimate joy? And he came through. Like, and it has not been all rainbows and butterflies. It has been a series of ups and downs. But from that point of reading that book in 2007, I felt like the decision I made as an 11-year-old, I finally began to understand what the gospel is and what it meant to live it out. So today I've been on staff with Athletes in Action, a Christian sports ministry, for 17 years. Been married to my wife, Lindsay, for 20 years. We have 3 kids. 2 of them are adopted. I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary school kid. All of them play sports. I've been around sports my entire life. I've been ministering at the intersection of faith and sport. And as I stepped into the space of youth sports with kids, I realized that I have been prepared, but very little, just with the craziness that is youth sports, which I know we're going to get to in this conversation. And then, Ed, I'll let you at the back end of yours talk about how we met and how we connected.
Amen. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good testimony. Ed, how about you, buddy?
Well, and yeah, Brian and I have known each other for over a decade, and we've done probably 50 podcasts now, and I've never heard all the details of that story. So, Jody, nobody has asked us that question of just how we even got here faith-wise.
Right.
So that was good to hear all that. So I grew up in just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And my dad was a high school football coach. Our whole life was sports. So just completely immersed in the sport world, but not a Christian, maybe a God-fearing family. My dad definitely had God consciousness in his background. My mom, not so much. So I had never really heard the gospel or studied the Bible or anything like that all up through high school. Very different from what Brian just described. In fact, I thought Christians were weirdos, and all I had were bad stories about Christians.
Right.
But I was also a very nerdy type dude in the sense that I was a super intellectual. Like, I just had lots of philosophical questions already when I was in high school. What happens when we die? What's the meaning and purpose to life? I was already thinking about that kind of stuff, and was just very empty with what seemed to be the available answers. And I did something, again, Brian probably doesn't even know this about me. I was an exchange student for 1 year, and got to go to Italy. And I took a Bible with me almost as a good luck charm, because I was going to fly across the ocean to get there. And it was a Good News Bible. I don't know if listeners remember, like, the Good News Bibles that used to have stick figures in them. And that's somehow I got my hands on that Bible.
That's great.
And I read the book of Ecclesiastes again, because it was by Proverbs. Proverbs was the only book I actually had any understanding of, as I would read it, because it's obviously just the one-line quips. But Ecclesiastes was right there. And as I read it, I just thought, man, this guy actually is struggling with all the same kinds of questions I am, only he's got access to everything and nothing is satisfying him.
Right.
And it stirred something in me to say, well, there is somebody in the Bible that I can relate to, but then 2, it's like, what are the answers then? And I ended up going to Kent State to play basketball. And again, I'm going to skip over a ton. I ended up not playing, but that's what got me to the school. And I just met in my first semester a ton of Christian men on campus that started to explain the gospel to me and showed me how the rest of the Bible was really the answer to all of Solomon's questions in Ecclesiastes. And the emptiness that really he was describing were really answered by Jesus. And so in 1988, I stopped running from God and just said, I want to surrender. I think this is what I've been looking for. And when I said that out loud, it really for me was also a package deal. And that I thought, if there's other college students, college athletes that feel the way I've been feeling, I want to show them who Jesus is. So literally, I kind of committed myself in my head to going into some kind of vocational ministry. And so I wound up coming on Athletes in Action staff back in 1992. And Athletes in Action is a ministry that is on college campuses and works with professional athletes for the most part. And so I started working with college athletes. Actually played basketball on their old traveling basketball team that, again, some of the old head listeners might remember. That's what Athletes in Action was known for. So we got to travel all over the country, sharing the gospel with Division I teams, playing them, and then sharing at halftime or after the game. It was just amazing.
That's great.
And so, same thing. So the back end of Brian's story is really my story too. We have 4 kids. Amy and I have 4 kids. And about a decade or so ago, when we started to get into youth sports, we just realized, this is a super fast moving train.
Mm-hmm.
We're athletes. We've been coaches. We've been immersed in the sports world. And yet this whole youth sport thing just seemed like this foreign experience for us.
Right.
The commitment, I'm sure we'll talk about this, the commitment level and all this. And we just looked around and said, there's really nothing for Christian people to be able to think differently about how to navigate the youth sport world. Right. And Brian and I have been talking about it for the last decade and just finally decided to put it in book form.
Amen. Well, I always, the way that I train and disciple men is to have a 2-minute, a 10-minute, and a 45-minute version of your testimony ready to give. Because what your testimony does is it allows you to be able to kind of connect with the people that you're talking to. Because a lot of times, kind of like what you were saying, Ed, is that you never met a really, a Christian that changed your life. It was just, you just heard Christian stories and saw the hypocrisy either in the church or Christian men. But when they can hear your story and kind of see where you came from, it relates and kind of resonates to them as much as possible. So I love that you guys have this kind of testimony that you're able to share. And, moving forward to, the youth sport issue has become pretty much an idol within the United States, pretty substantially, in my opinion. I am in the throes of youth sports right at the moment. I told you guys before we started, I have 2 14-year-old boy-girl twins that are massive athletes, really, really talented, really, really fast, really, just really, really good in all of those things. And, for years I've been preaching and teaching, how to navigate, the idea that youth sports overtakes church and it overtakes your family time and it overtakes all these things and then all of a sudden here I am kind of immersed in them, and I'm trying to having to figure out what that looks like, because my first 2 kids were not athletes, and they are 24 and 23 right now, but they were artistic and creative, and they're photographers and singers and writers and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden the twins are just these kind of natural athletes that we're trying to maneuver through life itself. So let's get started with just kind of what are you guys seeing in the youth sports world? How do we kind of navigate that? What is your suggestions, your opinions to what the world is throwing at our kids? They've got every parent out there thinking that their kids are going to be 1A baseball players, basketball players, football player. They're going to go Division I, and then they're the potential for them to go pro, different things like that. I mean, they're really throwing a lot of stuff at our kids and kind of just nickel and diming everybody else in the process. So from your guys' perspective, and especially in the collegiate area, what do you guys see, and what would your warnings be?
Well, again, that's a lot of questions, Jody. But we're here for it. We're here for it. You know what, Brian? Even in listening to Jody say all that, I just feel like before we say anything in detail, I feel like we need to just give an apologetic for the fact that we think sports are a good thing, and that even the current $40 billion industry that's become, and maybe I'll come back and talk about that in a second, Brian. Talk about kind of what our attitude is towards sports in general, even in this moment. Yeah,
we are both sports guys. I mean, we're Jesus guys first. We love Jesus, but we really, really, really like sports. Sports has had a huge impact on our lives and vocationally, it's been a big part of what we do as
Right.
well. And so we believe with every fiber of our being that there is intrinsic good in sport, which means that
Right.
God created sport,
Mm.
and because of that, like the idea of sport is his, there's just this inherent goodness that comes from it. Sport is not good just because it grows our bodies or it makes us mentally sharp. It's good just because God created it to be good. And we actually reading God's word that when we get pictures, illustrations of what the new earth is going to look like, the Bible's using language like there will be kids playing in the streets. And so even this idea of like, in God's future version of the new earth, there will be kids playing. So
Right.
there's goodness in that, and so we don't want that to be lost on any of us. That it's so
Right.
easy to look at the current world of professional sports, even college sports today, with transfer portal and NIL just kind of taking over everything, and then going all the way down to the youth sport industry, which Ed just said is a $40 billion industry.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
that's more than the entire video game industry right now. Youth sports
Right.
is, and so it's really easy just to spiral and go all bad on sports. And so we want to talk about what does it look like to live with this tension of, man, God created sport to be good. There's some goodness in it, but like we do with most good things in life that God has given us, we turn it into idols. We make it more than
Right.
what God intended it to be. And so the conversations we are excited about having is, what does it look like not to just get rid of sports or form holy huddles where
Right.
it's like, let's do our own Christian version, forget about the world, but what does it look like to actually live faithfully within a really, really broken system? And that, I mean, Jody, that's what we
Right.
get out of bed each morning and wanted to talk about, is what does it look like for us as Christian men and women and families to live counterculturally in this moment right now, when the rest of the world is saying specialize, it's all about winning, get a second job, get a second mortgage, throw everything you have into sport.
Right.
For us to say like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit and maybe live by a different metric or a different set of guidelines moving forward.
Right. And I don't want you to think that I'm anti-sports. That was not the question there. The question is the balance. How do we balance
For
this?
sure.
Because
Yeah.
I played four sports all through
Mm.
high school. I went to college to play football, ended up blowing my knee out, then joined the military. So I'm an athlete, by nature. Well, not anymore. I'm 56 and I feel like I'm still an athlete, but
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you that it is a good thing. How do we balance it, I guess, should have been
Yeah.
the question. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, and Jody, it's a good question, and that response isn't even so much at you as much as it's just in anticipation of even listeners, because in our
Right.
experience, people, it's easier just to go all bad on it
Right.
and
Exactly.
just think we're just going to pull completely out, only find the evil. And really, what Brian just said is true with any good gift that God
Yeah.
has created. It
100%.
always,
Right.
whether it's sexuality or it's the arts, like you mentioned with your
Right.
kids earlier, or any social system, there's a spiritual enemy that's trying to take the goodness of it and distort it.
Right.
So sports is no different. And so again, maybe that's even just a wake up call for us to say, wait a second, okay, I don't know what I expected this to be, but this is a good thing that's going to have satanic distortions in it.
That's
And
good.
the last
That's good.
20 years. So I think this is important too. It's really only been in the last 20 or 30 years. There's probably a 50-year history to how it started, but it's only been in the last 20 years that youth sports has started to feel the way that it feels, which is
Right.
also good to recognize, because it doesn't have to stay this way.
Right.
It's not like youth sports has always been what it is at this second. It's turned into this. It's a $40 billion industry, like we said. It's just amazing if you just let the number sink in. It's gone from being primarily about play, like Brian talked about. I mean, there really was a time, I grew up in the 70s playing sports, and it really was mostly about play.
Right.
It was. Now it's about performance and winning. Like, it really matters that you win as a 6-year-old in your YMCA league. And so we need to think about how that happened. It went from being very kid-centered to being adult and coach and parent-centered. All of these leagues did. And again, we can talk about any of this. It went from being affordable where just about anybody could have access to play to now it's becoming a luxury and super expensive. That's a relatively recent change.
Right.
It was local where you just played nearby. Forever
Right.
that was the case. Now you got to go across state lines.
Yep.
And I'll just say one more. It used to be very seasonal where, you'd have a baseball season that
Right.
was 6 weeks, 2 months. And then you didn't touch another organized baseball activity until the next year.
Yeah.
And now, literally, again, everybody that's listening knows how this is. Whatever sport it is, I mean, as early as possible, they want you to commit to it year round.
Right.
So we put all that out on the table just to say those are relatively new realities, and they're overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's actually a way to experience youth sports without having to necessarily sign up or give yourself over to every bit of what we just described.
And maybe, can I add this on too, Jody, before you get to your next question? So everything that Ed just listed, if you kind of stack that on top of each other, what has been the fruit of that? It has not been more kids becoming college athletes.
Right.
It has produced numbers like 70% of kids are quitting sports by the age of 13.
Yeah.
So like, just let that sink in. 7 out of every 10 kids now, because of this system that we have as adults have created with good intentions, thinking it's going to help kids get to the next whatever it's going to be, it's resulting in 70% of kids, before they have even hit their athletic potential, their physical prime, this is like almost pre-puberty for most kids, they're saying, this isn't fun for me. I don't like this professionalization of sport. I don't like the pressure that's being put on me. I don't like this win at all costs model. I don't like it that I have to go to get on a plane to go play. They're just saying, I'm done. I don't want to play. And so that to us too, again, if sports is a good gift, man, I want my kids playing as long as possible, not so that they can go play in college. Yes, that'd be awesome. But I really believe in the goodness and power of sports, and I want to extend my kids' athletic life as long as possible. But the current system right now is not working. And as Christians, if we really are trying to bring about flourishing in the cities that we live in the industries that are involved, man, we should care deeply about what's happening within the youth sports industrial complex right now, because it's not leading to kids flourishing.
That's so good. I like Ed, I grew up in the 70s and 80s playing sports, and I was able to play baseball in the summer, football in the fall, basketball in the winter, track in the spring. And that was a continuum. The only time those ever lapped were if you were in maybe a championship season or something like that. But like you said, I put the football down in November. I picked up the basketball. I played basketball till March, and then I picked up, ran track, and then once school was out, I did baseball in the summer, and it was available. And the only time that you would travel is, maybe an hour away. It wasn't, across country like they are now.
Yeah.
I had, my 2 kids right now, we only allow them to play one sport at a time. And, we only allow them to miss church is if it's a tournament. They're in a tournament time, not a regular game. They won't be able to miss church for that. And they're playing soccer, which is a heavy traveling sport, and basketball for my daughter. And then my son plays football and lacrosse, which lacrosse is another heavily traveled sport. And so as you guys are looking into the youth sports and all of that, like you're seeing, this massive increase of kids quitting. Like what's your thought process and your plan of how do we keep these kids staying engaged? Because 40 billion spent on sports is a lot better than 40 billion, in my opinion, spent on games. Sitting at home watching the internet and all of that. But how do we reduce that to an extent where it's not all about, like you said? I would imagine a portion of that money spent on coaches and trainers and elite we have these things here in St. Louis, like elite football and elite baseball and I've got a buddy of mine who is a baseball hitting coach, and he literally, that's all he does his life. He goes to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and comes home at 1 o'clock, and that's his life 6 days a week.
Wow.
Like he sleeps all day and then gets up at night and goes to batting cages to teach hitting. So,
Huh.
like, where is the balance, and where is the idea that you guys have? How do we get the kids to stop quitting, at 70% at 13, and balance that life for both the parents, so you don't go broke doing it, and
Yeah.
and the kid?
Again, great question, Jody, and this is why Brian and I are actually really excited, because we think there's a great opportunity here in front of us as parents, as Christian parents in particular, to be different. So, Brian mentioned that statistic that kids are quitting by age 13. And so really the follow-up question to that even should be, why
Right.
are they quitting? And he threw some things out. It's the travel. It's not fun. But the number one reason why is because of the pressure that they feel from coaches and from parents. Okay. And so, what Brian and I have even said, like, we can't control everything that's going on with every coach they're going to have. We're not going to fix the macro system. That's not our goal at all. Our goal would be, I can control what I am as a parent and maybe influence other parents around me. So what is it that we're doing as parents? Maybe inadvertently, certainly not intentionally most of the time, although some of us actually are doing it on purpose. What are we doing to create more pressure around our kids, especially as men? And I've done a lot of soul searching. I coached my first son's high school basketball team. I was an assistant coach. He was really good. He wound up playing in college. He was on a great high school team. And so I was cutting my teeth with my firstborn and realizing how many of my own issues were getting in the way of his experience. So my own regrets of what happened or didn't happen in my background, my fears, my wanting to protect him from having certain things happen, my vision for some future for him that he didn't necessarily share. It wasn't his desire for the future. It was my desired future for him.
Right.
It's my embarrassment or my insecurity around other parents where, I feel really, really, really terrible when he makes a mistake. I'm embarrassed by that. And I feel like king of the universe when he has a good game.
Right.
I feel like I'm more special than the other parents. Again, everybody, what I'm saying. There's just a lot of weird stuff going on, where it's like I'm stressed because he's not working out right now. He's doing something else in the middle of the afternoon. Somebody else is getting better than him. And so I project that onto him. I crush him after games or after practices with a million things to change and he didn't want any of that.
Right.
He just wanted relationship with me as he was trying to learn how to play this game and enjoy it. And I put all this other stuff on him. Okay. So again, that was a monologue, Brian.
Right.
Take it from
Yeah.
there.
So the question was,
good.
how do we kind of, as Christian people, reverse this trend of kids are quitting sports because it's not fun?
Right.
Three really practical things come to mind. One, like, there is hardcore research that says the more money we spend in youth sports, the less our kids enjoy it.
It's interesting.
Like, think about that.
Wow.
Well-intentioned parents, we just want the best for our kids. Like, I want my kids to have the good like the best bat. I want them to have the fastest shoes, the opportunity to travel across. The more money I spend, though, it's creating this idea in their heads that, man, there's a lot riding on this next game because my dad just bought me these shoes or this bat or we're traveling wherever. And so one really practical thing is maybe we just need to watch our wallets a little bit to understand that, man, it is the amount of money we spend putting too much pressure on our kids. So that's one.
Well, B, let me say this before you do number two, which means you can choose the local team.
Good. Yep.
You don't always, if I live here in Dayton, I don't have to pick the team in Cincinnati or Columbus because they have more bells and whistles. I could pay less and be on a local team, and he or she is not going to lose from that. They might actually benefit from the fact that we're spending less.
And that's a
Nice.
whole nother
Yeah.
that's a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. That's
Um,
great.
What's number 2, Brian?
so number 2 would be at games. We
Mm-hmm.
probably just need to shut our mouths more often than not. And so I
Amen.
would challenge listeners, and Ed and I have taken this challenge on ourselves of like, what would it look like to just show up on a Saturday or a Friday night and just for an entire game not say anything and begin to take inventory of what everybody else is saying and think, man, what might my kid feel on the field right now when he's hearing or she's hearing all of these things being yelled at them? Is that going to
Right.
put them up and make them excited about the moment, or is the pressure from the words we're yelling crippling them? So
Right.
that would be too, is just take inventory of the words that we say, and maybe we need to, along with decreasing our money that we're spending, decreasing the words that we're saying at the game. And then 3, there's a psychological principle called the peak end rule, and it talks about how we remember things in life. This applies to all of life, but especially youth sports.
It's
And it's
called what? It's
the
called what?
the peak end rule.
Peak end. Okay.
The peak end, and so the principle is saying that we largely remember moments and experiences in life based on like the peak moments of that event. And so you think in sports, I hit a home run, or maybe I dropped the ball. It's some really big moment in sport,
Right.
and then how that event ends. And so how does just about every youth sport event end? It's the car ride home, right?
Right.
And kids are saying, and again, this is not just Ed and Brian thinking this is the research saying this, that the car ride home for kids has been the space where they just feel like they want to get home as quick as possible because mom and dad, well-intentioned mom and dad, all we want to do is coach and critique instead of what Ed said before, connect with our kids. And so they're getting
Right.
into the car at the end of just putting themselves out there, and they're hearing, man, why didn't you pass the ball to Johnny? Or why do you keep passing it to Johnny? Why don't you just shoot the ball? Why didn't coach put you in on 4th down? Again, we've been
Yep.
discipled by ESPN to do this. We listen to all the
Were you in my car ride on Monday?
See, this is
Dude.
yep. If
so
you if
what
you
what I've just started to do with my kids, I started doing this 2 years ago. They get in the car after a game, and I just say, hey, was there anything that happened today that you want to talk about?
Golly.
You know what they say 99% of the time?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
No,
I
they
know.
don't, Jody. They don't care as much as we do.
I know.
They just want to go home. They want
Just want-
to
they
they
want
want to
to
shower.
play.
They want food. They want to play.
Just
And
this
so,
Monday,
yeah,
I'm telling you what, my son is, he's a freshman. My twins are freshmen. And he had his, freshman football game, and he's a cornerback, and he's a tailback. He's small, though, but he's nothing but a solid muscle. But he's probably the shortest guy on the team, but he's also one of the toughest, which is kind of crazy. Well, they put in a wishbone offense, and
Oh, nice.
for football, uh, my team didn't. The opposing team put in a wishbone offense, and growing up, that's all you played. When I
Yeah.
was growing up, that's a powerhouse run everybody over kind of offense. Well, in St. Louis and the Midwest, everything and the same thing in all of football's gone to the spread offense. It's the same thing. So I'm literally on the way home because he didn't get to play much. Because one, they would have just rolled him all the way to the end zone because he was so small. And I was like, I was trying to explain to him why he wasn't playing and what this was and all of that. And
Yeah.
how come you did that? And I did the exact same thing on Monday. And he
Yeah.
just sat there just kind of quiet. And, yeah, no. And
Yep.
man, I'm feeling a little convicted here now that you say that. But that's great advice, because what I see, as a pastor and as a Christian and a men's leader and a father and a husband and all of that, I go to these events with these kids, and I see parents trying to live vicariously through them, scolding the coaches and scolding the referees, and
Yeah.
just mouthing off, like, and trying to get involved in their kids, instead of teaching them to be adults and saying, hey, if you're not playing, go talk to the coach. What can
Yeah.
you do to play? If you're on the scab team, for offense or defense, knock the first team out, kind of, it's kind of like you gotta kind of step into that. So, like, for and those were great points. All three of those points were really, really good. But like, how do you, as Christians, even traveling events, I see just the, you said Satan's just taking little chunks out of the goodness of sports, and it's parents sitting in the hotel rooms getting drunk, while their kids are running around the pools, on these travel events, and it's almost more like the parents are having a better time than the kids are at these events, and that they get to do it. Like, what would your advice be to Christian families that are kind of in this mix of kind of the world, and trying to keep one foot in the world and one foot in heaven, so to speak, and not getting afraid by it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't get drunk. Don't get drunk.
Well, I don't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
thanks
but
for having us on your
there.
podcast.
my problem is I want to pull out my Bible and I want to start preaching. Like, it's like, oh man, I got to slow down. So
Oh,
Go ahead,
yeah, so
Brian.
a couple things come to mind, and this is what we talked about in the book that Ed and I co-wrote together, called "Away Game: A Christian Parent's Guide to Navigate and Use Sports." Is we're trying to help parents in this space do really two things. One is largely what we've talked about up to this point. It is to recognize, hey, this is what the industrial sports complex is pushing us towards. And so it doesn't mean, again, you have to eject from that system, but there does need to be a growing awareness of how sport culture is discipling us as Christian men and women and our families. And so one is, hey, we need to be aware of what's going on so we can see it and give language to it. But then two, a lot of what we're trying to argue for in this book and in podcasts like this is that sports gives us as Christian people an incredible opportunity to disciple our kids. Like, what other space do you have available to you where you can see your son or daughter go through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and like almost every single emotion imaginable on any given practice or game, and you get to see how they respond to coaches, referees, their teammates. You get to see who they're drawn to on the sidelines and what they say and what they don't say. And all of that stuff is incredible information as you're trying to raise your kid up in the Lord and disciple them, to be able to say, hey, this is what I saw today while you're playing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Sports have a really unique ability to bring out our truest of selves, for better or for worse, right? Like who I am when I play sports is the true Brian. And a lot of times I would say things like, man, I don't like the version of me that comes out when I play neighborhood basketball. But guess what? That's the real me. Like when I'm put in this competitive environment, I'm squeezed in a way that I'm not the rest of life. And so sport is an opportunity for discipleship. But to do that, we need to look at the game with a set of earthly metrics instead of just the earthly ones that the rest of culture feeds us.
Set of heavenly metrics.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
and
good.
so, Brian and I have been talking a ton about this, that we tend to give ourselves permission. And again, you say you feel convicted. We feel convicted all the time. That's what prompted us to try to get our act together.
Yep.
And to say, could we start this conversation amongst church people so we can help each other? Because we know, we're all struggling with all this. We're failing.
Right.
So how do we start to win? But we give ourselves permission to leave our Christian identity.
Amen.
In a lot of ways. It doesn't come into the sport world with us. It doesn't come into the stands with us. It doesn't come into the car ride home with us. The way we talk to coaches, the way, again, we've been discipled by professional sports that have said, you go to a professional sports game and you get drunk and you scream and yell and you cuss and you give yourself permission to cuss at the players. And okay. It's
and
like
treat
that.
them like commodities, right? Treat them like commodities.
Yes. And we're doing the same thing to our 6-year-olds then. Like
good.
that's what we need to realize, that we can intentionally say that's not how a godly man should operate in this space. And part of our problem, if we can even just say this as church leaders, is as pastors and those of us that have spaces where we get to influence people with Christian discipleship and curriculum, they don't ever talk about sports as a good gift from God. I mean, when was the last time you heard a sermon on a theology of sport or a theology of play? And there's a whole bunch of reasons I think why that doesn't happen. Maybe Brian can throw some out, but the reality is we're actually almost being encouraged as Christians to not be Christians in that space. And we need to redeem that back. We need to say,
That's
just
good.
like Brian said, this is a huge opportunity. Look, you're not going to remember 10 years from now that your kid didn't get to play when the team ran the wishbone and they would have blown him over. And whether
Right.
he ever adjusted, you won't remember that. Nor will he. It really won't affect the
Right.
rest of his life. How he went through the handshake line after the game actually might have implications for when he's 25 years old.
Right.
How he interacted, or whether he chose to see other people and care about people on his team or even on the other team, that actually has implications for 10 years from now.
Right.
Those are discipleship categories, right?
Exactly. And to be honest, looking back on the conversation on Monday, I think that's where he was. He was like, I understood, he understood why he wasn't playing. Like I was like, oh, how come you didn't play? And he understood because, the coach didn't want to get him hurt, because in a wishbone, you got two or three guys blocking and one guy running,
Yeah. People might not even know what that is. Dude,
no.
I literally just last Friday was actually saying, I wish our team would run the wishbone. We've got 3 really good running backs. And that's all it is you put a triangle in the backfield with 2 backs and a fullback in front of them, and you just run.
And if you got a good option quarterback, it's all over.
Come on.
So, I mean, they didn't know, they had no clue what a wishbone was. And I'm just seeing the conversations in my head now, and it makes so much sense and I've never, ever I don't get involved in my kids' sports because, I don't go to the coach and say, hey, why isn't my kid playing? Okay. I don't, because I tell them that's your responsibility. If you're not playing, there's a reason. And, it may be that this isn't your sport, but we're going to finish it out. And once we finish the sport, we can decide at the end of the season if that's going to be yours. But unless there's just a blatant disregard for my son or, something or my daughter that, they didn't deserve, that I'm not going to get involved in them playing or not playing. I will, though, be there for them for the encouragement. I always tell them, don't you ever brag about, the touchdown or the scores that you scored in soccer or whatever. I'll do that for you. You just be humble in that, knowing that God gave you a great gift, and that's the way that you need to live while encouraging your other players. And so, man, this has been like a really eye-opening conversation because it's so, it's so prevalent in our society. Because I think, the way that sports is sold, if that's a term I can use, is that it's a way out or a way up. It's kind of like, you can go from here to college, or you can go from college to pro. It's kind of like a way up, or maybe you're in a bad location, or the culture you have is really sports oriented, so it's a way out as well. And instead of saying this is a way to remain healthy, it's a way to understand team sports. It's a way to understand helping your brother. Like there's so many things that you could put together with that and make it a lot better than what we are currently.
Yeah, here's the lie in that, and I've been thinking about this for the last few minutes actually. And Brian, I would love for you to talk about like what do our kids need to hear from us as parents? What do they most want to know from us? Because I feel like we haven't really talked about that yet. But I want to say this first, because maybe even as a listener, people are thinking these 2 dudes don't know what they're talking about. Like I'm going to keep driving my kid, or he or she's going to miss out. And so we've been working with we were at a collegiate level ourselves as competitors. We've been working with college athletes, okay, for 50 years combined between us. Okay. Let that sink in. We've got our own kids. I've had 3 graduate from high school, so I see kind of what my efforts produced in their lives when it came to sports, for better and worse. Okay. Your kid is not going to make the collegiate level because of you haggling and pressuring and trying to force it on them. That's not how it works. The kids that wind up playing college sports have an innate God-given physical ability that just sets them apart from the other kids. And a lot of times you don't even see that until maybe they're later in high school. Brian wasn't even recognized till almost his senior year. And he wound up being a cross-country runner at Wake Forest. but it wasn't even evident that was going to be the case. But his body changed. And the second thing is they have a mentality that sets them apart. They work, they do the extra work on their own. They want it. They love it. It consumes them. It's not because somebody else is making them feel bad about not doing it. Right. That should set us free. Again, you need to decide whether you actually believe that or not. But you're not going to produce a collegiate athlete. They're going to be one because they want to be one, and they have what God has given them, what it takes to be one.
Yeah, that's a great point. Praise God.
What they need to hear from us, though, and feel consistently from the time they're 6 years old until they're 26 and 36 and 46 is a different thing. Brian, talk about it again. Maybe you don't even know exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so you're not going to produce a college or pro athlete. You're also not going to buy one. So that's, again, hopefully you're hearing the lie. What do our kids need to hear from us? What does any kid want to hear from their parents? I love you, and I love to watch you play. It is so fun for me to watch you play. And then 3, they need to feel this deep in their bones. How they perform does not affect that love or enjoyment of mom and dad watching them play. And so that is dripping with gospel type of love that says, my affection for you is based on our relationship, not your performance. It's saying there's nothing you can do while playing basketball today or running cross country or playing football, whether you're in the spread or the wishbone, that's going to make me love you any less. And I love sitting in the stands and watching you play. Or if you're sitting on the bench, just know that I'm here for you and I love you. What kids too often experience from us in our words or tone, again, well-intentioned, is a disappointment in how they play, which they translate as mom and dad is disappointed in me. And so how do I get their affection back? I need to perform better. I need to play better.
Right.
And God doesn't want us doing that in our relationship with him, right? Like when we sin and fall short, it's not like, man, I need to do better because then God will love me. No, God's love for us is fully declared in that we are sons and daughters of the King. And out of that, we can go and live freely. And so that's what we want our kids to do. We want them to play from a position of love and identity and not for it.
Amen. We talk about how it's the prodigal son who has not performed well.
Right.
He comes home and what does he find? He finds a father whose arms are open wide, ready to have a party because of their relationship. He's just glad he's back. But what too many of our kids are experiencing is running into the older brother. Who's judging and saying you don't deserve this and making him feel some kind of way, right? And because I think every one of us will say, oh yeah, I communicate love to my kids. Right. But again, if you do an inventory or maybe even ask them how they're experiencing you after games or before games, or what do you wish was different in the way I interacted with you when it comes to sports, and which I've done before. That's a very if they'll be honest, that's a very eye-opening experience. That's how we got to this conclusion. They want to know we have their back and we're just going on the journey with them. And it's just a game.
Amen.
It's a game.
Oh, that's so good.
That's what they want to know.
So good. Yeah, that is good. Yeah, you're right. We have taken the fun out of the game. It's moved obviously into the collegiate realm with the pay for play basically now is what they've got, and we've taken it. That was pure at one point. I've always loved college sport. I don't like pro sports because there's a bunch of overpaid babies, and honestly, that's what's going to end up happening into the high school realm. It seems like as well. So.
Well, especially if our kid's any good at all, you start feeling this pressure of, well, if they were just a little bit better, could we get some money out of this?
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to say that out loud, but yeah, that's driving the equation. But even that, there's so many circumstances that are completely outside of our control, even when it comes to that sort of thing. You're not going to be able to control it. Will you still have relationship with your kid when they're 25 such that they want to come home for Thanksgiving?
Amen.
I don't want to ruin that because of the way I treated them when they were 15 after a basketball game.
Praise God. Praise God. All right, so tell me, we just got a few more minutes here before you guys got to jump off here. Tell me a little bit about the book. How did the book come along, and how did you guys decide on this book together, and where can we find it?
Yeah. Well, we just gave you an hour explanation of where it came from.
Exactly.
Like this is all coming out of our own lives, our own failures, our own frustration,
Amen.
our own successes, and kind of seeing what was working and
Right.
listening, like really listening now to parents and coaches and just trying to take all that and put it into a really accessible form. And the book is really a practical guide. It really is, where we actually pick lots of fruits of the spirit and different virtues that we want to see developed in our kid and say, here's a roadmap for maybe how to get there. Here's some perspectives that you could try to push into them about. Here's questions you could ask them. Here's adjustments I need to make in my own head as a parent. Again, we've been pretty vulnerable about our own mess ups. Like maybe I'm the one that's actually getting in the way of this virtue being developed.
Right.
Because I'm not exhibiting it, So that's what the book is doing. Brian, go ahead. Why don't you take the baton with whatever else you want to say about it?
Yeah, I think that's good, Ed. Where you can find it, any online retailer. So if you just type in away game into Amazon, it should come up. Ed and I do most of our writing at thechristianathlete.com. And so you can find it there, as well as a bunch of other resources, whether you're a parent, athlete, coach. A lot of our writing centers around what does it look like to integrate faith within sports? How do we contextualize what the Bible says and lay it to bear in our lives as parents, athletes, and coaches?
Our hope was that people in the church would get a hold of this. Yeah. Again, there's nothing magic about this book. Right. It's wisdom that's been out there that just needed to be directed at us as parents in the context of youth sports. And so you go on the journey together with some other guys, or some other couples, and say, hey, let's read this, and it'll give you language to use. It'll just give you perspectives so that we're not trying to do it alone. Right. Like you lock arms with some other parents and say, in our corner of the bleachers, this will be different because we were here. Yeah.
It's a big deal in the church. I mean, I can't tell you how many Sundays I'm sitting there watching. All of a sudden I see a family while I'm preaching get up and walk out and I've left. And I'm just glad they're there for the few moments that they are, and I appreciate that. And I'm not saying anything about it in case my church is listening.
Well, a whole nother podcast would be, how do we equip people actually to be sport missionaries in those spaces? Like, let's give them what they need to do it.
And I would love to be able to do that with you guys, because I don't think an hour is long enough to talk about all this. So I know you guys got a busy schedule, but I would like to reschedule something on, like, let's give the audience a plan of action of how we do become the salt of the earth and the light of the world, even in the sports context. So that would be a great conversation to have.
Yeah, we'd love to do that, Jody.
Okay. We'll try to get that set up pretty quick. But guys, man, I thank you so much for your time and your open and your honesty about this, and your love for sports, your love for the children, and even the children that are out there. And I think that's something too that we could talk about in the next episode is, how we can be the bright and shining light and the salt of the earth to the other kids who may not have. As men, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make disciples of all nations, and that might be somebody else's kid as well. And we can come alongside of them on the sports field, or, in the hotel or whatever, and bless them with that. And so we'll promote your book on our social media. We'll have it all on the podcast as well. We're looking forward to what God's going to do with this book, and hopefully he'll open up doors for you guys just to be able to get into churches and communities that it will change lives.
Thanks,
thank you. Yeah, we're actually about to have a conversation with a pastor who wants us to come speak to their congregation to do this very thing. So we're very open to doing that. If people are listening and they want to talk more, like Brian said, thechristianathlete.com is the place to find us.
Awesome. All right, brothers. Well, thank you so much. God bless you guys, and we'll be praying for a mighty move of God in this area.
Amen.
Amen. Right. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to the Man Up God's Way podcast. Visit us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and our website at manupgodsway.org.